Hey, do you play in bands? I did for the longest time. And I wish that I knew that DistroKid was a thing. I don't even think it existed back then. DistroKid makes music distribution fun and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. 1 million plus artists rely on DistroKid to get their music on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all the major streaming services. When you get DistroKid, you can see a DistroKid bank and withdraw your earnings. You get notified when you've earned royalties, and you can withdraw via the app. And you can even check your streaming stats on Spotify and Apple. Get 30% off your first year on DistroKid by going to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. 30% off for your first year. That's not bad. We know it's a tough world out there. Why don't you make it easier for yourself? And to get 30% off that free year as an artist, where you get 100% of your royalties and earnings, go to distrokid.com/VIP/101pod. All right, stay with me. I'll be right back after this.
With Amex Gold, you can experience the gold standard. You get access to exceptional dining, plus 4 times membership rewards points on eligible dining purchases. That's the powerful backing of American Express. Terms apply. Cap applies. Learn more at americanexpress.com/withAmex.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. Coffee Mate is the world's biggest coffee lover because we love all the ways you enjoy. Wait. Coffee Mate can't love coffee more than me. I'm a foodie. I went to Kyoto just for a nitro matcha latte. What? Oh, I have to finish the ad. Coffee Mate, for the love of coffee.
All right, it's 101 part-time jobs. I'm Giles Bidder, and I speak to musicians and bands about all the work that goes in behind and around putting out a record and touring and being a band. Because there's loads of stuff that goes into it and loads of stories that we never really hear about. On today's episode, we hear from Alastair Shuttleworth from Bristol-formed band LICE. Just released their second album, Third Time at the Beach, and it is a wild-sounding record. It's demanding to listen to, but it's rewarding too, and I think that is the kind of art they're going for. Really interesting to speak with Alastair. He is a music journalist. He formed his own magazine, The Bristol Germ, and has gone on to be a voice on Six Music and written for The Guardian, Pitchfork, Quietus, loads of great stuff that Alastair's been involved with, and it's a rarity to get someone who has dedicated their life really to finding interesting voices, interesting artists, and getting them all in one place to talk about. So respect and love Alastair Shuttleworth. LICE are touring Third Time at the Beach in October, so you can catch them in Bristol, Falmouth, Birmingham, Glasgow, and Manchester, ending up at Corsica Studios, the legendary, in London on October the 24th. This is a really, really interesting band. Go give them a listen if you haven't already, then come back here and hear Alastair Shuttleworth on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Cheers for listening. If you enjoy this episode, make sure you click subscribe, leave a review. All that stuff helps massively. Cheers. 101 Part-Time Jobs. You started a little while ago, 2017. First album came out 2021.
Indeed.
I mean, 7 years now. Does it feel like 7 years? Best part of a decade?
Yup. Yeah. Feels like 20, man. Well, yeah,
so much has changed, and like not even talking COVID, because but 6 months, a year playing music, things change all the time. You change as people. Your ideas change.
Yeah, we've grown up as people. When we first met, like, we were kids, we were at uni. I discovered pretty much all of the music that came to really mean something to me and really inform what I now do in and outside of Lice through meeting the other members. So I'd never listened to industrial music. I'd never listened to minimalism. I'd never listened to noise rock. I never heard any of these terms.
Mm.
And um, so I guess in terms of like certainly my musical development, um, I know I do think I'd be completely different if I hadn't met the others. But
That's nice because you start to build your own world, and you respect each other.
exactly. And it's one of those things where it's like now, we're all grown-ups, and we've had lives outside of the band and with the band, I mean, all these adventures that we've gone on and this stuff that we've gotten to do. When you start a band, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you don't know you don't even know if you're going to end up getting to play gigs.
Mm.
That in itself feels like, and for ages we really struggle to work out how to book gigs. That's actually how we like the first show that we played, we had to put on ourselves because we were reaching out to all these folks and like venues and bookers and stuff and saying, "Hey, we're this new band, no demos, no social media, just like nothing that we now realize, oh yeah, you should probably have that if you're looking for gigs. We'd just be
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, we're a local band, we've got this stupid name. Can we play a gig? And obviously nobody replied to us. So I went for drinks with my uni mates to a pub in Bristol called the Crofters Rights that had a venue, like a venue space in the back. And I just asked someone at the bar, I was like, "Hey, so you've got a venue space there. How do you handle bookings?" And they said, "Oh well, if you're interested in hiring it out and putting on a night, then you could do that." And we hadn't, that never crossed my mind as the thing you could do. It hadn't crossed it for any of us, but we put on a gig there, and immediately we had like presence in the local circuit. People were like, all the promoter stuff were like, oh yeah, this band's like put on their own show at Crofters and like, headliners did really well. Maybe we should put them on something. So it's like when you start a band, you don't even know if you're gonna get to that stage. It could be like, oh yeah, you just like hang out and like jam together or whatever, and then that's it.
Hmm.
Um, so the idea that like best part of a decade later, we're still, you
Yeah.
know, hanging out and going places and stuff. It's yeah, it's really nice, but it definitely feels like the length of time it's been.
I think the challenging thing of that is that the goalposts are always moving. So
Mm,
that kind of attempt to try and stay satisfied and stay like quenched, because imagine after that gig, you're like, sick, we've done that. What's the next thing? And maybe the next thing's going on tour, and then the next thing's releasing an album, and next thing's releasing going on bigger tour and selling that tour out. And then, so how do you personally deal with that kind of idea that you're doing stuff that you're proud of, you got stuff behind you that you're really excited about, but still you just want more?
I guess that's the sort of like constant thing with being in a band, I guess, isn't it? That you are always aware. I guess because so much of it comes down to numbers, like in terms of like venue capacities,
Mm.
being the obvious one, you're consciously aware that there's like another level you can go up, if that
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So, we're doing this tour at the end of the year, and the kind of and it's all like, 300 cap rooms, and the logic, you know, I guess underpinning that or like what sticks in your head is like, oh yeah, this goes well. We could probably do like a bigger set of rooms
Mm.
at the start of the year. So it's one of those things where um, I guess you are constantly aware of like the progress you can be making or whatever. So that can, I guess, be slightly maddening in a way, but at the same time, it's nice because. Um, on the other hand, you're always aware of the progress that you have made, and all
Hmm.
like the places that you've been and stuff. Nobody can really take that away. You've kind of
Yeah.
got that back forever.
You've done it. Gratitude.
Indeed, absolutely.
Fuck yeah. Outside, outside of playing music, how's it been like that? I think we're similar ages, and coming out of uni was like, oh shit, fuck. For me, it was working at the pub. That was the only job I could get.
Mm.
What did you study at uni, and what ended up, kind of falling in place for you?
So I studied English at uni. I spent my undergrads, yeah, doing the usual, racking up a tab with the government,
Yeah,
and then, I did a master's, so stuck around Bristol, buy myself some extra time. I wanted to work in radio, so I was volunteering at BBC Introducing in the West and my community radio station BCFM, and I'd started the Bristol Germ, so I started writing about local music.
yeah.
So I was doing that for money. I'd work sometimes at a pub as well, the Old England, which is a small venue in Bristol and in the Montpellier area. So just off Stokes Croft. That place was kind of a big deal to Lice generally, in that all the members, apart from Natalie, and our including our previous drummer Bruce, we all like worked there
Hmm.
or lived there or like put on nights there, our own shows, but also other people's shows. And when basically that place, to my understanding, prior to us coming to Bristol, was kind of a rough pub, as in an extremely rough pub. It came into the hands of a wonderful guy called Diego. He was very, very kind to us, and um, kind of took us under his wing a bit, and had us for shows, started getting us involved in like bar work and other stuff around the place. And then when he kind of gave up the pub life, because he had a kid, if memory serves, he passed over the reins to Bruce, our old drummer. And Bruce, um, kind of, especially as a young guy, I think he was only like 22 at the time, he really took that place in hand. So he like decorated it. He was putting on gigs all the time. He had like a barbecue pit and stuff that he made, and it became a bit of a hub of the community. So us and like all the kind of like local bands that we're really good friends with, like Scalar, like FKA Scalping, if you
Oh
know
yeah,
them,
of course, yeah.
the Bingo Fury Luts, yeah, like all these like people around Bristol, that would be our kind of like regular hangout. And so we actually wrote all our first album there. We would kind of have these weekend long things where we'd all kind of like sleep on the couches and stuff upstairs, and then we'd practice in Bruce's room or sometimes in in the pool room. But on the side of that, yeah, I was like cleaning bathrooms, and Gareth was doing some bar work there and
You
stuff.
got your
So
HQ
for all of us. Exactly,
and your
exactly.
drummer running
Basically,
the place. That doesn't sound dangerous at all.
yeah, I think it took years off all of our lives. There were a lot of lock-ins during the summers of those 2 years.
Working in community radio, that's I've done that, and it is like it's a bit like being in a band. It's like
Big
I really
time.
love this. It feels really good. There's little money in it.
Mm.
How do those things, talk to each other? How do you reconcile those two things? So what was your mindset? Was it like I'm putting words in your mouth now, but was it like I like doing this? This is what I like doing this. There's potentially a job at the end of the tunnel. In for a bigger organizations. You're already a BBC introducing. Is that it? Just keep on like nose to the grindstone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things where um, I've I've always been a really big believer in persistence. And, I know just enough about football to be able to understand, say, the analogy. If you stay on the pitch long enough, you're bound to score a goal. And, I'm in a band that's been going since the late Jurassic period, and we've just gotten our first like proper record deal with a reputable label. I was working on community radio and like popping up around Bristol doing bits in radio for For a really long time, I was probably doing community radio because like most of the time I was at undergrad as well. So like I guess 3 years by the time I left Bristol,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I eventually I managed to get some. I now do work in radio, but again, that took a really long time. It's frustrating because there's an element of privilege involved in that. You know, so much of this work and work generally in the media is incredibly poor paying initially. There's people that aren't, they're in a position where they can't just kind of stick things out forever
Mm.
because at some point, you know, it just becomes untenable. But I was lucky enough that I could just think about it in terms of keep plugging away and eventually you get there.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's funny how again I'd not thought about the connection between that, but yeah, community radio and radio generally and doing stuff in life, it's been a very similar case of just, you know, hanging in there and eventually you get where you want to.
It's a difficult thing to talk about because it's the finances, and some people can't afford to not have a full-time job. There's also like an identity thing and like a belief thing. You know, completely understand that people vary in their beliefs of themselves. So, you know, you might have two people who've had the very similar upbringing next to each other, and one of them is like, yeah, I'm just going to not give myself another option. Whereas for the other person, you know, that just doesn't work. Life doesn't work like that for themselves. So, you know, I think it's really easy to kind of brush broad strokes and be like, well, you just got to do this, you just got to do that. I think everyone. I think the thing that I've settled on, I've landed on recently is like, all you can do is look at the resources around you
Mm.
and like make the best of that what you will.
Absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, an element of it as well, thinking about resources, is where you are. And um, in being in Bristol, I guess you know, was fortunate in that there were things to do, you know, certainly up to a level, that there were, you know, community radio stations and like this really incredibly vibrant music scene and all these other people that were really interested in that sort of thing that you could sort of feed off. Part of that is the culture there was there, with Bristol being or it certainly feeling at the time like it was a bit outside the glare of the industry and outside like the focus of the industry. One of the things that comes out of that is people trying to do stuff in music, trying to do stuff in radio, by necessity, I guess, become incredibly self-dependent
Mm.
and very entrepreneurial. So it's one of those things where it emboldens you a bit because since so many people are trying to do things and in lieu of like a big organization they can slot into, they have to like make their own thing. It gives you the courage to make your own thing.
Mm.
So, case in point, I as well as doing stuff in radio, I really wanted to write about music. I really wanted to write about music, especially local music, for like big publications. So I was writing to The Quietus, to The Guardian, to all these places for ages, trying to get them to let me write something about local music, and eventually. I I I couldn't get anywhere, so I started my own magazine. So I started doing the Bristol Germ and putting on nights and stuff, and I was able to parlay that into gigs writing for. So I now write for those publications, but
You
it's
gave
one of the
yourself your own experience. You made your own portfolio.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where if I hadn't been surrounded by those people in Bristol, if I hadn't been surrounded by this incredibly entrepreneurial DIY spirit
Mm.
living there, I don't know if I would have done that, and in turn if I'd be writing for these places now.
101!
When you finish your debut record, you put so much kind of pressure on that, and we romanticize debut records. There's a huge amount of um, I guess, pressure put on them in industry terms. You know, when a band is kind of has a lot of momentum behind them, we put so much stock in like the commercial performance of that record, whether what critics think about it. By the time a band does, finishes their debut album, they're kind of seen as like an old established band,
Yeah.
in a way, even if they've only been going a short time. But when we did that first record, and you kind of slay that dragon of like, oh, we really wanted to write this, we want to write our OK Computer, we want to write like a really interesting rock record, and we kind of felt like we'd done that. And I really wanted to write a really uh I wanted to write like a prose-based lyric thing that could kind of sit alongside the record and almost be enjoyed independent of it.
Mm.
And I kind of felt like I'd done that with Wasteland too. So when you go through something like that, um, you, we certainly became a lot more comfortable, I think, with the idea of just of kind of getting things wrong and throwing things in, and we ended up being a lot less precious about things.
Hmm.
And I guess that it's that's the kind of confidence that you get in the company of people that you know really well. I don't think that we could be writing the music that we do now if we hadn't been friends for so long. And we weren't, I guess, a little bit more grown up now.
When you've been a band for 7 years, you're far more likely to stick around another 7 years.
Big time.
There's something in that, and in like a sustainable, positive way. And I'm talking about like the satisfaction and like the happiness really of the people in the band.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one of those things, I think sometimes about all the bands that have like formed and disbanded in the time that we've been going. And by and large, these people are still in music, but I don't know, they didn't massively enjoy touring in like the bands they're in, or just the dynamic didn't quite work. So it's one of those things where I don't know. I do feel very lucky that we kind of found each other as a gang. Obviously, there's been a few different permutations. Like Natalie joined, well, like four years ago, initially as like a touring member, and then like I guess because we introduced a lot more, like at the very early stuff that we did was a bit more sparse and a bit more simple. It was just kind of a normal guitar band setup. Around Wasteland, we started like, building instruments and putting in a lot more electronic stuff and things like
You
that.
built
And
instruments.
so the Intonarumori, Gareth built this. It's a big wooden box.
Is that on? Is that in the photos?
Yeah, yeah, that's the one. The Italian futurist Luigi Russolo, around I think like 1912, he wrote this thing called The Art of Noises, and basically the futurist movement was all about how as we were kind of going into the 20th century, and Milan in Italy, where these people came from, was going through a really rapid period of industrialization. All of a sudden there were cars and trains and things, that art needed to change to kind of reflect that age of like speed or whatever. And a lot of the kind of lyrics in Wasteland dealt with, I guess, how we saw ourselves as a band in the kind of in the like ourselves as like a an erstwhile like punk band thing in the musical landscape at the time, and how it felt like there were a lot of old ideas that were still being peddled. And I guess we got interested in that as a reference point lyrically, but also like for other bits of what we were doing. So we found out about this instrument that Luigi Russolo made, because basically he thought, we're so used to hearing cars and hearing machines and stuff now. We should probably have music that sounds like that. So he came up with this instrument that was a big wooden box with like a string inside it. You crank a handle at the back that turns a wheel that rubs against the string, which is attached to a drum skin, and that reverberates in the box like an acoustic guitar. but it sounds like a jet engine basically. So Gareth built one of those, and we used that on Wasteland. It's not on this album, sadly,
You
but we do
dropped
have a
it.
lot. Yeah, we do. We binned it off. In fact, if anyone wants to buy it, then yeah, have at it. But now we got a bunch of there's an old chair in Gareth's place that he like hit with a hammer and recorded himself doing that in a bunch of different positions. That's all over the record now. There's a door. We stayed in this place in France, and there's a door that was really, really creaky. So we recorded that. That's in one of the tracks on the album called White Tubes. So we've since, I guess, like turned to stuff in the real world rather than just building nuts nut stuff for this one.
Jobs! 101 part-time jobs, loosely based on the fact that everyone has jobs playing music. What are your most memorable periods of time of work life, good and bad? What let's start with the bad. What are the worst days that you've had at work?
I've been pretty lucky in that certainly since we've been doing Lice, I've not really had any bad jobs. Bruce was a good boss, you know, when I was cleaning bathrooms at the oldie, our old drummer was a quite a good boss. But
He gave you the good marigolds. He gave you the thick gloves.
absolutely. He hit me up. But I guess I certainly used to get incredibly drained at the first job I had when I came to London, which was actually working as at a radio pluggers. So I worked for this small radio plugging company, and what would happen was I had to lock up the office at 6 o'clock. We were, sort of, everyone else would leave, and generally would be like, okay, Alistair, you lock up because I was the most junior guy on the team. I would wait till they were gone, and then I had this drawer in my desk, and I'd get out my like recording interface, my mic, my notebook, and I'd be working on the lyrics for a third time at the beach. I'd be working on the lyrics for this album, and it's one of those things where when you're by yourself in this, because I had to do that because it was noisy back at the house. I felt like I couldn't really demo vocal stuff, but here I was in this empty building, so I thought obviously I'm gonna do that. So I'd do that, and obviously this kind of madness sets in when you've been working for 8 hours quite intensely. And then sometimes I'd be there until, like really late at night, and I wouldn't be able to get a train home. So, but it's one of those things where in the way that we all did, we all got so obsessed writing Third Time at the Beach, that I guess that was like kind of normal in the scheme of things. But one of the songs on the record is about that. A lot of the lyrics were written in those kind of late nights in the office. One of the songs, Fatigued, Confused, there's lines in it about being in the office in this job that I was just draining myself at, trying to write lyrics for this album with this incredibly awkward, difficult, hard to explain concept, and listening to the radio and the fact that there were all these new bands coming through that just seemed to be kind of flying and having a sort of like easier time of it. And I guess like the sort of like the exhaustion of that. So I don't know. I think I think that is something that you get from listening to the record. I do think you get the sense that we all like burned ourselves out a bit, like writing parts of this.
The record takes away from you in that kind of way.
Yeah, we definitely we there's pieces of us in this record that I don't think we'll get back.
But I mean, it asks of me, it asks of the listener. It asks for patience, and it asks for resilience a little bit, because there is that up and downness about it. It is agony, it is ecstasy.
Yeah, but well, that's very kind. You got that from it. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, where um, it's like what we were saying in terms of that like doggedness and just like plugging away. When you do finally get there, just the satisfaction and the relief, especially. I do think you get that from the record as well. It the the high points where there are high points, less than exactly joy. I guess it feels like a bit more like relief that some kind of resolution's been made.
It's real life.
Big time, absolutely.
So there was Alastair Shuttleworth of LICE here on 101 Part-Time Jobs. Cheers for being here, and if you enjoyed that, make sure you click subscribe. We put out 2 episodes every week, and they're always with pretty damn good bands and artists, if I can say myself. Cheers again, and see you later on in the week for an episode with Matt Sweeney, who you might know from Guitar Moves on YouTube and loads of bands, but most recently the Hard Quartet, who also features Stephen Malkmus. Great record coming there. See you Thursday.
101 Part-Time Jobs is hosted by Giles Bidder and produced by me, Olivia Swash. This has been a Mighty Moon Media production.
It can get lonely climbing Mount McKinley, so to entertain myself, I go to ChumbaCasino.com. At Chumba Casino, I can play hundreds of online casino-style games for free, like online slots, bingo, Slingo, and more. Plus, I get a daily login bonus. It's just too bad that up here, I don't have anyone to share my excitement with. Woohoo!
Live the Chumba life. Anytime, anywhere. Play for free now at ChumbaCasino.com. VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.